Hey everyone.
Hey guys.
Welcome to another Travel Therapy Mentor video. Tonight we're going to be talking about Whitney's upcoming assignment in Hawaii. And I know a lot of you guys, a lot of travel therapists in general, are very interested in going to Hawaii. So we're going to talk a little bit about the process, since it's a very recent thing for us, and we just went through all the licensing, flight, scheduling, housing in Hawaii, and all those things. So we want to tell you guys about all that. I know some of you guys will be interested. We'd love to get your questions and everything. Any questions you have about Hawaii, we'll try to answer in this video. Anything we don't hit, feel free to ask them in the comments. We'll try to answer them at the end. So Whitney's going to introduce us, and I'm going to get this video shared in a couple different groups.
All right, everybody. For those who may not know us, my name is Whitney Aiken.
I'm Jared Kazaz.
And we are both traveling doctors of physical therapy. We are the faces behind the Travel Therapy Mentor website and online social media presence. A lot of you guys have probably tuned in for our semi-weekly videos in the past. We used to do them every single Sunday. In 2021, we've been doing them roughly every other week or so. We try to bring you guys new and exciting information about travel therapy. We've covered over the years that we've been doing this, we've covered almost all the travel therapy topics we can think of. But some of these things are ever evolving and changing, and so are our experiences. And this upcoming one is going to be such a cool experience for us, and we can't wait to share the whole journey with you guys about everything that's happened so far with our planning to get to Hawaii, and then we're going to tell you everything about it once we're there. We're super excited. It's just going to be hopefully a contract, a dream contract, an experience of a lifetime to get to go and live in Hawaii and work there. So we can't wait to tell you guys more about it. So while Jared gets our video shared in a couple groups, if you guys are tuning in live on Facebook tonight, we'd love if you'd say hello in the comments and let us know who you are. If you're a current travel therapist, if you're someone who's thinking about doing travel therapy, if anybody who's watching has already been to Hawaii, we'd love to hear from you. If you're thinking about going to Hawaii in the future and you want to ask us any questions, please just let us know in the comments. Just a little bit about kind of us and what we've been up to. We spent the first couple months of 2021 in Mexico. We were there for 2 months, not working, just for fun. And then we've been back at home in Roanoke, Virginia for the last almost 2 months, all of April and May. And then we're going to get into telling you guys a little bit about what we were planning for the rest of this year, and then now what that's actually going to kind of look like instead. In addition to that, for business stuff, we did recently do a sale on our travel therapy course. So we're really excited to welcome a group of new members into our travel therapy course. We can't wait to have those guys in there. And if any of you guys are watching and you joined, we're really excited to have you. If you're thinking about the course, let us know. We'll probably run another sale later this year, or we can shoot you a smaller discount code at any time of the year if you guys are interested in that. So again, Jared's just sharing our video in a couple of groups, and we'll get more people join on with us live. Hi Maggie, she says, I'm just starting my travel career this September. Hawaii is one of my dream states to get to. Maggie, I'm sure you're not alone. I think it's a lot of people's dream to get to Hawaii. Hey Melanie, hey Shelly, hi Austin, hi Sam, hi Mallory, hi Noel, hey Amber, hey Melissa, hi Nick, thanks for joining Nick, hey Lara. Glad to see you guys tonight. And again, if you're watching later on the replay, you can type in #replay in the comments. And I know a lot of you guys will listen later on the podcast. So thanks for those that listen there as well.
Yeah, so Hawaii is something we've been thinking about pretty much since we started traveling. I mean, anyone you ever talk to that's taken an assignment there or has been there for any extended period of time says it's amazing. A lot of people end up moving there, which is a really cool thing. So we've always wanted to go there, and then we didn't really think it would happen. It's really hard to find 2 contracts together. Most of our travel career, we always needed 2 contracts together. We wanted outpatient, and that can be really hard to come by. Like 2 outpatient jobs in the same area in Hawaii can be really difficult. And then this opportunity, we really weren't expecting for Whitney to take a contract. And this kind of fell into our lap. We were in a situation where we were trying to decide what to do after we got back from Mexico about a month ago. And this job fell into our lap. It sounded perfect. So
yeah. So even to go back a little bit further than that, though, kind of, over the years, Hawaii had been on our mind, but the licensing process can be a little bit tedious to get licensed in Hawaii. And we usually try not to apply for any licenses that we're not going to be using, relatively soon. So, it'd been kind of on like our distant future radar. But when COVID hit and we were trying to figure out, what our next plans were going to be, we ended up spending quite a bit of time at home in Virginia last year. And we had big plans to go travel internationally. Well, Hawaii sort of came on my radar kind of midway through last year, where I was thinking, well, if we're not going to be able to travel internationally for the foreseeable future, I mean, at that point, nobody knew when we'd, if ever, within the next year or so, be able to travel internationally. So last summer of 2020, I was like, well, what if I worked on getting my license in Hawaii and we ended up taking a job out there? And that would be kind of like a fun working vacation, but it would still be within the US. Now, they had a lot of restrictions back last summer, but I went into it knowing that the license would probably take a little while. And so I thought, well, maybe if I just start the licensing process, then sometime around like last fall or last winter or the beginning of this year, maybe just at some point, we would take a job there. And Jared, I keep saying because we basically decided at this point, Jared had already reached his financial independence number, was planning on being pretty much semi-retired. So pretty much our plan was going to be just for me to take a contract and not to deal with the hassle of trying to find 2 jobs. So that was kind of our plan from the get-go, is just I would go through the licensing process and he wouldn't even bother getting his license there. So this whole thing started, I literally started my application process in July of 2020, and it literally took me 9 months.
Yeah. Licensing is difficult there. It should not take that long. So that's the first thing I want to talk about. Some of the ins and outs of the licensing. Whitney has been on the phone and sent emails back and forth to Hawaii probably a dozen times. So first thing I want to talk about is licensing.
Yeah, so we'll talk about the licensing, and then we'll just kind of intertwine that in a little bit with like our story of how we got to where we are at this point. So when I applied for the license back then, part of the licensing process, for those of you guys that have applied for state licenses, the more other licenses that you have, the more it slows down the process to get an additional license. And that was especially the case for Hawaii, because they wanted to do things a lot of like old school. Like they wanted these other states to send verifications by mail to Hawaii.
Yeah, and just real quick to clarify that, if anyone's not interested or not familiar with the licensing process, when you apply for a new license as a PT or any therapist, you have to get verification from every other state that you're licensed in currently, or that you've ever been licensed in the past, that your license is in good standing. So they need to send some sort of verification. You would think in 2021 that would be a really easy thing. Like they would just send an email to the new state. It would all be no big deal. Turns out, we're still operating in like 1990s era paper mail system, and things get lost, and it can be a much bigger hassle than you think it would be.
Yeah, so when you're applying for a new state license, you're not only depending on that state and how quickly they process things, you're also depending on other states and how quickly they process things. So with COVID, all of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, a lot of therapists have had more trouble and a slower process of getting licensed in all states. But I think that Hawaii was one of the worst, because I think historically they had already been a little slow. People, say they're on island time, and it's just, they're not in a huge hurry. So what the big hang up on mine was, for the longest time, was they kept saying that they hadn't gotten one of my license verifications from the state of North Carolina. And I called and emailed the state of North Carolina several times, and they said, we sent it on July 31st, like it was sent. And so I kept having to try to call back and forth and play phone tag and email tag and all this stuff. And now part of it was also my fault, because we took a road trip at the end of 2020, and we were doing a bunch of other stuff, and I didn't necessarily check back in a timely manner. I would let like a month go by and be like, I never heard anything else about that Hawaii license. Maybe I should call.
Yeah, we were in a situation where we didn't think a contract would really work out anyway. So it was kind of something like, okay, well, wouldn't you put this application in? Eventually it'll go through, no big deal. But if you're going to apply for an Hawaii license, make sure that you follow up frequently, because what happens is they'll have an issue and they won't tell you about it. And that happened a couple times. So like the first one was the verification from North Carolina. They hadn't gotten that, and if Whitney hadn't called, they would have just never said a word about it until she called. Mm-hmm. So if you apply for a license there, make sure that you're following up and see what's holding up the process.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you on the phone, but if you don't, then you have no chance.
And what I actually found out with them is there was an email address that someone gave me in one of the travel therapy groups. I went on there and was like, I just cannot get through these people. Like, does anybody have any advice? And a couple people said, try emailing them. They're a lot more responsive and better via email than they are via phone. And so I ended up getting a lot better response when I started emailing this direct email address, but I couldn't find it anywhere on their website. Like I could not figure this out. And they're not very helpful on the phone. So from my understanding, in Hawaii, they have this division of professional licensing. I think it's called the PVL, the Professional Vocational Licensing Division. And that is the licensing division for any and every profession on the islands. Like not just for physical therapy, but any profession goes through this PVL. And that's a separate thing than their physical therapy board. And there just seemed to be a big disconnect. And I could not find any way to communicate directly with the physical therapy board except via this email address that I had to find out through the grapevine. So if you're interested in that, I can drop that email address in the comments here to let you guys know. But long story short, it was a huge hassle. Literally got to the end of the year, and then I ran into holiday delays where I was communicating with them around the holidays, and then it became the new year, and then we went to Mexico. And again, I kind of didn't really follow up. And then when we got back from Mexico in March or April, I was like, enough is enough. I need to figure out this Hawaii license thing. It's been, 8 months at this point. So finally I got in touch with somebody and they said, okay, it looks like everything's in, we got that North Carolina verification straightened out. You know what it is that's holding it up? You need to pay an additional fee because we are now in a new licensing cycle, because a whole new year, we were in a whole new calendar year, and there was another fee that I had to pay that no one told me about. So I literally had
And they never would have told. It had been over 3 months and they had never said a word. So if you don't follow up, you'll just never know.
So they were like, you need to mail a check. And I'm like, I have to mail a check to Hawaii. I can't pay online somewhere. I paid my original fee and my original application.
Do you have Venmo?
Online. Yeah, like something. Can I wire it to you? They were like, no, you need to put a check in the mail. So that day I went and wrote a physical check, put it in the mail. And then a few days later, out of the blue, I get an email that says, here's your Hawaii license number. And I was like, wow, like that was not even I didn't even realize this was just gonna happen all of a sudden, like the day they received my check.
So from July, around the end of July last year until 3 weeks ago is how long the whole process took. And again, that was mostly Whitney's fault for not following up. So if you do want to get the license quick, make sure that you are staying on top of everything. If you don't have as many state licenses as we have, it would make the process a lot easier anyway, because a lot of the holdup in the beginning was the state license verifications. Mm-hmm. But make sure you're following up, and if you don't hear anything, call or email and make sure you know why there's a hold, what's taking so long.
Right. So one person that I recently spoke to said back in beginning of 2020 or late 2019, before COVID, they had gotten their license in only 4 weeks, which is like a pretty typical time frame, about a month. So I would guess that under normal circumstances, it's going to take a month to 2 months. But with this said, I think COVID really slowed things down, and I think maybe I didn't follow up, and I had more state licenses. So if you think that you're going to run into any of those issues, start this process early and plan for it to take, a good 3 to 4 months. Because unfortunately, some people will think, when I see a job in Hawaii, I'll apply for it, but I don't have the license yet. That is not going to work for Hawaii.
Yeah, there's some states that does work in, states that will license really quickly. There's some that will take only a week or two, and you can find a job that's 3 weeks out, you can get the license and you can start on time, but Hawaii is not one of those states. California is not one of those states. So there's some states that will not work in. So if you want to take a job in Hawaii, make sure that you get the license before you ever start looking at jobs there. Otherwise, it's probably not going to work out.
Absolutely. So with that said, because we had no idea when my Hawaii license was going to come through, we were not really planning on going to Hawaii. We were just sort of like loosely like, we'll see if it works out. It didn't really work out last winter, maybe this winter. So we were actively planning on going and exploring more of Latin America because we had to cancel our whole Latin America trip in 2020, as a lot of you guys know. So we did go to Mexico. We spent 2 months in Mexico, and then we wanted to go to more of like Central and South America.
Yeah, so the goal was, or the plan originally, before she got this email about the license being approved, we were starting to look into places in Costa Rica where we could fly to, and we were probably going to stay there a month or two. Ideally, we wanted to go to a few countries, but South America and Central America, they're still struggling a lot with COVID. So Costa Rica was one of the only countries we could find that seemed like it would be, a reasonable thing for us to go and spend some time there. So it was going to be Costa Rica, and then suddenly got an email that this license was verified, and so then we were like, well, maybe we could give it a shot.
Well, because part of it too was we were thinking Costa Rica. We were also sort of thinking Ecuador seemed like it was going to be okay, maybe Colombia. But right around the time we were looking at actively booking flights and looking at Airbnbs and stuff, we were also starting to read some stuff that was saying that cases were going back up in Colombia and Ecuador, and things weren't looking as good as they had been looking the previous 2 to 3 weeks. And that's been kind of the case with all of COVID. Like, a lot of these countries, and for a while with the states in the US, it was like their rules were changing from day to day. So there was still a lot of uncertainty, and we were not feeling very certain or very sure about our Latin America plans. We hadn't even booked a ticket yet, and we were like, maybe we'll leave in like a week or 2 weeks, but we hadn't booked a plane ticket. And it's almost like it just worked out perfect because we hadn't booked those plane tickets yet to South America or Central America. And then I get this email, and we were like, well, maybe I'll just put a couple feelers out there, see if there's a job option. If there is a job option, maybe I'll pursue it. But if not, again, we could just stick with our Latin America plans.
Yeah, and so as you guys know, when we got this email, we work with a bunch of different companies, probably 9 or 10 different companies right now. And we know that some of them have more jobs in Hawaii, or more jobs pop up for them more often. So we reached out to those companies and said, hey, we specifically want one job in Hawaii that's outpatient. Do you have anything? And for a start date, we're pretty flexible as long as it's a good job. And we weren't really optimistic. We didn't think we'd be able to find something. But luckily, there was actually a few different options, and one of them sounded perfect for Whitney.
Yeah. So one of our recruiters, actually, he works for a smaller company. They have a lot of what are called direct contracts, and we have our hot jobs list where we will advertise to you guys a few hot jobs each week that our recruiters have. And we had seen consistently over the last year or so that this particular recruiter had a lot of outpatient jobs in Hawaii, and I used to think that that was just impossible because with a lot of the bigger companies, we were mostly seeing like hospital jobs or skilled nursing jobs. But this one company, they have a lot of direct relationships with outpatient clinics there. And so I thought he was going to probably be our best bet, this particular recruiter, for finding a job there. And turns out we were exactly right, because he was like, well, I have that one that's on your list already that we're looking for candidates for. Are you interested in it? And I was like, well, kinda, I'd be interested to hear more. And so because I was going directly through the recruiter who works directly with the manager, it all went super fast. Unlike a lot of times when you go through a bigger company and they have to go through all these like middlemen, you might not hear back right away. So within I heard about that on Thursday night. By Friday morning, because I sent an email to him like super late on Thursday night, like, hey, just putting feelers out there. When I woke up Friday morning, I already had an email from him. By Friday afternoon, I already had a text message from the manager in Hawaii, and he was like, hey, when can you talk? So we set up a phone call on Monday or Tuesday, just because I wasn't available over the weekend. And I pretty much had the offer right away. And the cool thing was, Jared and I, with our travel therapy mentor business, we stay pretty busy with that. And lately I've been working PRN in Virginia, and I realized that it's kind of a lot to juggle both, to juggle what we do with our online business and working clinically. So I was kind of feeling out whether or not the manager might be comfortable with more of like a part-time schedule. And he was totally okay with that. He was like, you know what? Yeah, we could use you. What about Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Just 3 days a week. And I was like, yeah, this sounds great. Like, I'm going to get to live and work in Hawaii and only have to work 3 days a week and still make like pretty decent money. We'll get into talking about like the pay for contracts there. It's not huge like a lot of places, but I was like, this could work out perfect. And
yeah, it really sounded perfect. That whole process moved really fast, and finding someone that was very lenient and willing to consider a part-time schedule was really cool. It's exactly what Whitney wanted. An outpatient one-on-one clinic is hard to find anywhere, but especially in Hawaii. So that was wonderful. And so pay in Hawaii, that's something that, you have to remember. We talk about this all the time. Last video we did, if you watched that, talked about supply and demand. And everyone, almost any therapist that you talk to, any travel therapist, they want to go to Hawaii. They want to take a contract there. So there's a lot of therapists looking for jobs there, and there's a limited number of jobs. So you're never going to find like a really high paying job there. You just have to understand that like when you go there, it's kind of like a working vacation. You're not going to make a ton of money, but you're going there for the experience. And we knew that going into it. You're not going to find really high paying jobs. And even with all the relationships we have with companies and recruiters, we're not going to find, $1,800 a week or $1,800 a week assignments there. So that's one thing to really keep in mind, is that pay is never going to be really high in Hawaii if you take an assignment there?
Yeah, typically the jobs we've seen there, we always say don't go below 1,500 for PT, OT, and SLP. We've seen a lot of jobs there that are below 1,500, and that seems to be kind of the norm, somewhere in like the 1,400 to 1,600 range. I don't think we've ever seen a Hawaii job advertised above 1,600.
Yeah.
And this job was going to be, if I was going to be working 40 hours a week, it was going to be 1,500 after taxes. And because I'm only going to be doing 3 days a week, I don't know my exact pay after taxes because I'll be taxed a little bit different. Only working 27 hours a week is what I'm supposed to do.
3 9-hour days.
3 9-hour days. So I think my take-home pay will be roughly like $1,100 a week or so, but it's still pretty good for only working 3 days a week and being in Hawaii. So that's amazing. Like, it's just the whole thing. I was almost like so hesitant to be like, we went from on Wednesday of that week thinking that we were going to be booking a ticket to Costa Rica to Tuesday of the next week being like, I guess I'm accepting this job in Hawaii.
Yeah.
So then the mad rush begins to try to figure out all the logistics. So we'll get into talking about that. Real quick though, if you guys are learning anything, if you are enjoying this, we'd love if you'd hit the thumbs up button, give us a like, leave us a question. I know one, Maggie asked, do you work with one company or multiple recruiters? So we work with multiple recruiters at multiple companies, and we think that's very important, especially if you're looking for something very specific like Hawaii. And back in 2020, summer, we started putting feelers out back then. We told all of our recruiters like, hey, sometime later this year or next year, we are going to be looking for an outpatient job, just one outpatient job in Hawaii. Kind of keep an eye out for us and let us know. But having told our one recruiter that, who I knew he had those direct relationships, I kind of figured out that he was going to be our best contact for outpatient jobs, especially for outpatient jobs where they might be willing to be flexible. Because I was even thinking, like, if I could just get 4 10s, I would like 4 10s better than 5 8s, but it turned out even better than that. Like 3 9s is going to be awesome. So you have to work with multiple recruiters to get to know who has what. And we can definitely point you guys in that right direction via our connections if you are interested in that.
Yeah. Okay. So next, once the job sounded perfect, we started to get excited about it. We had to look for housing on the island. So this job is on the Big Island. We started looking at Airbnbs in the area. As you guys probably know, cost of living in Hawaii is not cheap. So Airbnbs there were extremely expensive. And so we've written some articles and we've done videos on housing in the past. So we basically just go through all the things that we talked about in those articles and videos. Airbnb, Furnish Finder, we looked on Facebook Marketplace, all the places to see what the housing options are, what the cost, like what the average cost is, and what we could expect to find. And what we ended up finding is that Airbnb was way overpriced, and we found a really cool, like an in-law suite kind of thing, which is perfect for us on Furnish Finder, which was our best option for sure.
Yeah, we put out feelers with people that we'd known that worked there before to see if anybody had any connections. I definitely, if I had to, I would have asked the clinic director, but we didn't get to that point where we had to. I definitely asked my recruiter since he has placed people there before. So you want to use your connections. But Furnished Finder, if you're not familiar with it, is a website for traveling healthcare providers. It started mostly for traveling nurses. It's like an Airbnb type website. But it basically just puts you in contact with the landlords, and then you sort it out off the platform, which is nice, and it makes it a little more flexible, I think, for like flexible lease terms, for flexible rent. I think they're usually more reasonable because they know you're a traveling healthcare provider, and you're getting a month-to-month guarantee most of the time with a healthcare provider, versus Airbnb, I think, is usually priced more for like nightly and weekly stays.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really important point. So Furnish Finder, I would always, if you're only looking on Airbnb, always consider that if you're taking an assignment anywhere, but specifically for somewhere where housing can be hard to find, like Hawaii. So Furnish Finder, the rates are usually better because, yeah, they have the guarantee that you're a healthcare professional, so you're probably someone they're not gonna have to worry about paying or having issues with. And then also, a month-to-month rate is always going to be a lot better than, on average, a daily rate. So that's a very good place to look, and that was definitely the best that we could find.
Yep. So with that said, there weren't a lot of options because we were looking like really very close, because a lot of times these contracts are ASAP starts. Now, they were pretty flexible with me. They were like, how soon can you get here? And I was like, probably at the end of the month or the beginning of June at this time. That would have given us about 3 to 4 weeks, 3.5 weeks. They probably would have pushed it back a little further because they were flexible, but most of the time as a traveler, it's going to be within 4 weeks. You got to hurry up and be there. And so a lot of the housing was already taken that we saw on Furnished Finder. Like we saw there were listings, but they weren't available. They weren't available till August or whatever. So we were really honestly had like one main option that was like even relatively reasonably priced. And when I say reasonably priced, we are paying $1,800 a month just to stay at an in-law suite. So it's a bedroom, a bathroom, a living room, and a kitchenette, not even a full kitchen. $1,800 a month.
Yeah, it's only slightly bigger than a studio, but that sounds like a lot. But if you compare, if you go on Airbnb right now and look at the Big Island, look at Kona, that's where we're going to be. We found some places that were like $3,600 for a 1-bedroom. So we were actually really pretty happy with $1,800 a month.
Yeah, and our friends that had lived there in Kona back late 2019, early 2020, before COVID, they said they found a place on Furnished Finder at that time for $1,500 a month. So, I'm sure you can find places a little bit cheaper than that. And theirs was also in Ohana, which is typically like an apartment or an in-law suite that's attached to someone's home, but usually don't share any space with them. So from what I understand on ours, it's kind of adjacent to it. We have our own separate entrance and everything, but we'll be on the same property with them. Now, of course, if you're looking at like standalone condos or apartments, things like that, a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
But you also need to factor in when you get someone's like furnished apartment or things like that, it has all the furnishings. It usually has like all the kitchenware. I was just texting with our landlord earlier, and they have all the bedding, all the towels, all the essentials. Now there is, thank goodness, on the island there's a Walmart. So if we need to get some stuff when we get there, but luckily it's going to have pretty much everything we need. So these are some things that you guys are going to have to think about when you're talking about moving to Hawaii. Make sure to ask in detail what all is there. So you need to consider, all right, what am I going to bring with me, or what am I going to be able to get, at Walmart or wherever when I get there?
Yeah, and that's a important thing about Hawaii is you have to remember that you're not driving there, so you're not taking a bunch of stuff. At most, you're probably going to take 2 suitcases, right, per person. So you can't take all the normal things you would normally take in your car, and so that kind of eliminates the option of just finding an apartment and doing month to month in an apartment and then getting furniture and everything, because you'd have to pretty much buy everything. So Airbnb, Furnished Finder, Facebook Marketplace, travel therapist groups or travel nurse housing type groups are really good for finding housing. You really need to find something that's probably already furnished. It's going to be really difficult if you don't.
Yep. And we'll get into talking about packing and moving here in a minute, but that was our first big hurdle, was housing, and we felt such a sigh of relief when we got housing checked off and got it secured. The next big hurdle was a car.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys know this. I heard some, I think I read an article about it, and I had some friends mention about used car prices just in the States right now, in our area. The used car prices are going up a ton. It's hard to find used cars right now. What we didn't realize is that's a nationwide thing, and it's even worse on Hawaii, on the islands. So there's not that many used cars available, and there's not very many car rentals available. And this is all, I guess, fallout from COVID, basically. Issues with computer chips and manufacturing new cars, and so that's causing more used cars to be bought. And so there was a story just a few weeks ago that was talking about people renting U-Hauls in Hawaii because it's actually cheaper than renting rental cars. And I was very nervous about this because we looked it up, and there's some cars renting there right now for $2,000 a month, which is insane. And that would have been a deal breaker for me, honestly. Like, I don't think that I could go somewhere and rent a car for $2,000 a month. That's insane.
Well, because really, I mean, if we had been paying $2,000 a month for a car plus $1,800 a month, so we'd be looking at $3,800 a month, and I'd only be making about $1,000 a week. We would just be like barely breaking even.
Just with car and
not
housing.
Even breaking even, because then we have to consider food and everything else, like flights.
So luckily, we again tried to use some of our connections, reached out to other people we knew that had been there or are currently there, and we got connected with this guy who's a local guy that has several cars, and he just rents them out on a month-to-month basis to healthcare providers that are there. And the thing about Hawaii is they're always getting new healthcare providers in, so he always has a steady stream of people, and he just operates on word of mouth. We would have never found this guy otherwise, and he's renting us a relatively new car for $600 a month. So we considered that a big win.
Yep. So that was another really good thing about having a connection. We chatted with a person who's working there right now. We kind of jumped on the first really good opportunity we found for a couple of reasons. Well, one, it's just so overpriced right now. Two, the weekend that we're moving, we leave in a week from today, and it's going to be Memorial Day weekend. And there was not only a car shortage, of course, and then there's a lot of tourists trying to go to Hawaii, probably for the same reason we're going to Hawaii, because you can't go a lot of other places. And it's a holiday weekend. So not only were things going to be $2,000 or more, but there also wasn't anything. So when we first found out about this guy who was renting for $600 a month, we just jumped right on it. Actually, later I found out from another traveler that they rented from another person who does a similar thing. The downside of what we're doing is the guy who we're renting from is on the Hilo side of the island, on the other side of the island, whereas I'm going to be working in Kona. And it's only about an hour and a half or 2 hours between the two sides, but it's not super convenient, but it's not the end of the world. So we're going to be having to, we'll talk about that with the flights, but get from one side of the island to the other with the car, whereas I just learned like yesterday that there was a guy on the Kona side we could have talked to. So again, ask around, make sure to hit up your connections. A lot of people also choose to buy a used car, and then sell it. But for us, we're actually only going to be there for 8 weeks. We thought that was a pretty short amount of time to be dealing with buying a car and then reselling it. Whereas if you were going to be there maybe like 6 months, you might decide to do that. Yeah,
I would say length is a major consideration. And then also, like we said, used cars are in high demand and the prices are really high right now. So we felt like that was probably not the best option. Short period of time, you might get a car that's not great and have issues, and so it seemed like it would be a lot better to rent a car as long as we could find something reasonable.
Yeah, because the connection that we had, the travel PT who's there right now, who gave us this guy's information, he said he rented from this guy for a couple weeks while looking for another car, so to buy, and then he ended up buying a car and he returned the rental. So that could be an option if you're going to be there for a longer contract, like rent a car for a week or two and then try to look for one to buy. But again, with the whole COVID car shortage and holiday weekend and all that stuff, we were like, well, we're not going to deal with that. We're just going to go get the car from this guy.
Yeah, so I guess we should say too, the 8-week contract that we talked about, that was Whitney's choice. We want to do another road trip later this year, and we want to do a road trip to TravCon, which is in September. And we normally leave, we've done that the last 2 years, we leave in August. So we wanted this contract to be over, have a little bit of time to explore the other islands, and then get back in time for that road trip. So most contracts are going to be 13 weeks, but we purposely tried to get this one short, and the guy was willing to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, most people think like you'd be crazy to only go to Hawaii for 2 months because I mean, normally if we had the option, we would love to stay for 6 months. You know, it'd be great if the facility wanted you for a longer time and you were there already. That would cut down on your costs long term probably too, because you invest a lot to fly over there, so might as well stay there for a while. That's how we always do it with our international trips. But yeah, we were on a little bit of a time squeeze because we're gonna try to do our road trip at the end of August or beginning of September, like we have the last 2 years, to get out to Vegas and back. So so we're only gonna do 8 weeks, and then we're, like Jared said, we're gonna go like maybe a week in Maui, a week in Kauai if possible. So we'll talk more about that later, but yeah, so we'll only be doing an 8-week contract, which was nice that he was willing to negotiate that, because again, a lot of these like hospital contracts and stuff like that, they wouldn't have negotiated with us quite as much.
Yep. All right, so if you guys, I saw we have some questions and comments. We'll go over those in the end. If you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. If you're getting value from this video, please like the video, give us a heart, leave us a comment. We always appreciate it.
Yeah, or tag a friend who wants to learn more about going to Hawaii, because that's most travel therapist dreams.
Yep. So next, talking about packing. That's something we're still trying to figure out, but we'll discuss
before we talk about that. I just want to talk about flights real quick, because it was 3 like really big hurdles we had to get through. So we wanted to make sure we had the housing set up. That was such a relief. We wanted to make sure we had the car set up. Well, then we had to figure out how to like piece all these things together and let them know, what day am I going to check in? What day am I going to pick up the car? And so that depended on when we got the flight. Now, as you guys know, if you've watched any of our stuff or listened before, we're big travel hackers. So we use a lot of points for flights and things like that. So we were trying to finagle what would work out best for us to get over there. People quite often ask, like, do you get reimbursed for your flight cost by your recruiting company? It just depends on the bill rate for that contract. Now, some recruiters will work it into your pay package to pay for your flight, but most of the time it's going to come out of your weekly pay one way or the other. So in my case, there was really only room to negotiate a $250 reimbursement for something, either the license or the flight. And the license easily cost more than $250 between the licensing fees themselves, and then you have to get your FSB PT score report sent and all the verifications I had to do. So I was like, whatever, I'll just apply it to that. I have receipts for all that stuff so I can get reimbursed for that. And we'll figure out the flights on our own via travel hacking.
Yeah, so we have the Southwest Companion Pass this year, which we really wanted to use. We've gotten very little use of that over, we got it in 2020 and we've only used it one time in the last year and a half. So we wanted to use that, and now Southwest flies to Hawaii. So we thought we'd be able to do it that way. We looked at some options and turned out that there are some options. It would have worked. It would have not really cost us that many points. We have plenty. But it was going to be a really long flight, a lot of connections, and so then we looked at some other options instead.
Yeah, and so because we had to cancel our whole trip last year because of COVID to Latin America, we actually had a flight voucher that we needed to use. They had extended the deadlines. I don't know if any of you guys had that happen to you, where like you had a flight voucher that from a trip that got canceled in 2020. They kept pushing back the deadlines, like usually it's use it within 6 months or 12 months or whatever. Well, a lot of them pushed it back till the end of 2021 because flying and traveling was just so uncertain. They wanted you to have time to use it. So we have a flight voucher that was supposed to be from Virginia to Peru, from our trip that we had to cancel, and it was actually a pretty big flight voucher, like over $1,000 each. And we have until the end of this year to use it. So we were like, maybe there's some way that we can finagle using that voucher to get there more easily. It's on American Airlines. And we have a lot easier way to get on American Airlines from here in Virginia than we did the Southwest. The flight options were less restrictive, I guess. So
Yeah.
we were able to use that voucher.
Yeah, that was a big thing about Southwest, is that our local airport, Southwest does not fly out of this little small regional airport near where we live. And it would be really convenient. Obviously, we don't want to drive a car 3 hours and leave it for 2 months. That doesn't make any sense. And so we'd have to rent a car to drive to the airport and then fly from there. So turns out that American Airlines does fly out of our regional airport, so it just made more sense to use that voucher than our points.
Yeah, and we needed to use it anyway so it doesn't go to waste. And since it doesn't look like we're going to be traveling internationally right away like we thought, we figured we might as well use it for this. So we just booked a one-way ticket because we're not quite sure what our ending flight is going to look like yet. So we were able to book a one-way ticket. Now, as I'd mentioned, for our particular situation, we're renting a car from the Hilo side of the island. So it's typically a little more expensive to fly into the Hilo airport than it is the Kona airport. And trust me, like everybody, the guy who we were renting the car from was like, no, nobody does that. Like just fly into Kona and then rent a car for one day to come get the car from me. Well, again, it was Memorial Day weekend, and there were no cars, not even to rent for a day, just to drive across the island. So it made way more sense for us to pay the extra $100 or whatever it is to fly into Hilo, meet the guy there with the car, and then just drive across the island that way. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, a lot less hassle that way.
Yeah, but again, as you can see, guys, like so much logistical stuff has gone into this. Like it has been nuts the last couple weeks trying to plan all this stuff. So finally we were like, great, we got the housing, we got the car, we got the flights. Like we're feeling really good. Now the last thing that we haven't quite accomplished yet that is on like my to-do list is we have to get COVID tests done before we go.
Yeah, so Hawaii is being a little more cautious, obviously, because of their islands there. So they are requiring PCR tests, whereas everywhere else we've been so far, you only have to get antigen tests for. And this applies to everyone, whether you have the vaccine or not. So we are in the process now of scheduling our PCR test. It has to be within 72 hours of arriving in Hawaii. So it's a very fine line because you can't get it too early, but you can't get it too late because you need the results before you fly. So we're trying to work that out right now, but ideally you want to get it almost exactly 72 hours before you arrive in Hawaii to make sure that you have the results in order to leave, and then that it's far enough, or it's recent enough that you're able to get into Hawaii.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is the current guideline, and it actually, as of now, even applies even if you've had the vaccine. So even vaccinated people have to get tested. Now, this could change at any time. I think they're probably heading in the direction of not requiring testing for vaccinated people if you have your vaccine card. So, if and when you make it to Hawaii, just check with the rules because it could change at any time. But as of right now, that's the current policy. And as with everything, it was so hard for me to figure this out. Like, I spent hours on the Hawaii website and the airline website trying to figure out the testing requirements and rules. They have a specific list of trusted testing partners. You can't just go and get a test anywhere, and you can't just get any kind of test. And the thing that was really throwing me for a loop was on the Hawaii website, it says that you have to have a NAAT test, a nucleic acid amplification test. But every time I went to like CVS's website or Walgreens website or one of the trusted testing partners, they weren't calling it that. They were calling it rapid test or blah, blah, blah test. And I'm like, which one is it? Because they're so strict. They're like, make sure you get the right test. If you don't get the right test, we won't accept it. They won't let you into Hawaii. Or if you have the wrong test or you don't have a test, you have to quarantine for 2 weeks when you get there. Originally, that was the whole thing. Like, back last year when we were looking at Hawaii, you had to quarantine no matter what. Now they've gotten rid of the quarantine if you test negative. So finally, after many phone calls and asking around, I figured out that the PCR test is a type of nucleic acid amplification test, and they will accept that. So I made sure to ask Walgreens like exactly which one I need, and I have to wait till tomorrow to schedule it because they're only scheduling 3 days out. So I'm just like stressing until I actually have that scheduled. And then of course, when we get tested, then you're gonna have to wait for 48 hours and make sure you passed and it was negative before you can get on the flight. So that's our last little hurdle we have to get through. And then of course, the next part is packing, which we haven't started yet.
Yeah. So we're a little nervous about this. We don't know exactly what to take, but we definitely have some ideas of all the trips we've been on. I mean, we've done 5-month trips with just a backpack. So we think we'll be fine, especially since we're going to a place. It sounds like we've talked to the host. They have pretty much everything we'll need. So, obviously you're not going to take things like plates or silverware to Hawaii, and that's already there, luckily. But, if you were going to do that, you would get that when you get there. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like she has things like beach towels and all that stuff for us, which is wonderful. So mostly we're just going to take clothes and shoes like we would on any international trip that we take.
Yeah, and if you guys have followed us for a while, I've done a post before about packing for our international trips. Like I just most recently did one in February when we went to Mexico for 2 months. So we've traveled up to 5 months internationally just with our backpack duffel bags, which is the size of a carry-on. So we're used to packing light. The only difference here is that I do need to have work clothes and work shoes. But because I'm only gonna be working 3 days a week for 8 weeks, that's literally 24 work days. So I think I can get by with probably maybe 2 pairs of work pants and then like a few work shirts that I'll just interchange. And I'll probably just bring 1 pair of work shoes. So that'll add an extra pair of shoes and an extra couple outfits. But typically how we approach traveling light for these longer trips is we use a lot of what we call like travel clothes, which are more your athleisure type outdoorsy clothes, things that are moisture wicking, things that are lightweight, things that roll up easy and roll up small. Jared has like 5 or 6 travel shirts, 3 pairs of travel shorts, a couple pairs of travel pants, and that's it. And he just wears that interchangeably for, guys are pretty easy. They wear the same thing out that they wear at the gym, that they wear to work. Like it's the same types of clothing.
Yeah, well, it's also important to get something that's mainly like a plain color or something not with logos and things because it's more interchangeable that way. You can wear it to more places and stuff. So yeah, we for our first trip back in Asia in 2018, we got a bunch of these like solid color shirts that are easy to pack and dry quickly, and they work really well.
Yeah, and then for me, I've gotten into a lot of like the travel brands or outdoor brands like Columbia. I have a lot of like travel shirts and dresses from Columbia because they'll have things that are like still a cute pattern or fun color, but they're still moisture wicking, they're still lightweight, they roll up really small. So you just have to be strategic when packing that kind of stuff. When you're packing for something like this, like if you go to Hawaii, we probably are going to bring more than just our duffel bag. We'll probably each bring 2 bags, like check a bag and have a carry-on. But just think about it like you're packing for 10 days or 2 weeks, and then you're just going to re-wear everything. So you'll have like 10 days or 14 days worth of outfits, and then you're going to re-wear them and interchange them. So you want it to all be coordinating. You don't need to pack 3 months of clothing. You just think about it as like a 10-day trip, and then rewear and wash. Obviously, you're gonna have a washer dryer access and all that sort of thing. Again, just like a week's worth of undergarments, socks, that kind of thing. Of course, we're gonna bring our bathing suits, but we don't need to bring towels and stuff. Shoes, I think we might have a little bit more shoes on this trip because we'll be doing a lot more hiking. So we'll probably want to bring our actual hiking shoes in addition to our sneakers. Whereas on our international trips, we usually just have like one pair of sneakers that we'll wear for easy hikes or walking around. But because we'll be doing like legit hikes in Hawaii, we'll probably bring separate hiking shoes, maybe like our day hiking bags, not big, bulky hiking bags, but just like a small backpack for hiking, things like that.
Yep. All right. So next, we've been getting a lot of questions recently about insurance, health insurance, and this contract is being only part-time. It's a good opportunity to talk about that. I think we've gotten like 5 questions in the last week about what do we do for health insurance, especially on our long trips or when we're not working full-time.
Yep. So because we started back in 2018 not working full-time, this was the first time we really had to take into consideration what we would do if we weren't always on our employer's insurance. So since 2018, we've been navigating this situation and teaching you guys about it. We wrote an article about it. For a while there, we were using a combination of the marketplace, the healthcare.gov plan when we weren't on contract, and then when we were on contract, we'd go back on the company insurance. Now, as of last year, we stopped doing that. So I'm not even going to go on the company insurance for this one, again, because it's part-time and it's just not worth it for me. So what I did starting this year is I'm on actually a private insurance plan through an insurance broker. And it's through United Healthcare. It's one of their, it's a pretty good, I think it's a PPO health insurance plan, but I keep the same one year round, which is really nice now because whether or not we're working at my PRN job, working a travel contract, traveling internationally, just taking time off at home, I just keep the same insurance plan. I do pay slightly more than I would if I was on an employer-sponsored plan, but I don't have to switch all the time and I don't have to have gaps in my insurance because it used to be, if I was going to work 52 weeks a year at a job, you'd stay on your employer-sponsored plan and you'd get the best deal. But we do so many different things now, it made a lot more sense for me to have a private insurance plan that stayed with me all the time. And Jared's currently still on his marketplace plan, but he's thinking about switching to a private plan because what we've recently started to learn is your marketplace plan usually only covers you in the state that you live in, but he hasn't had to deal with that because he hasn't had any medical expenses or any kind of medical procedures out of the state or anything like that. But it is something to consider, like since we're going to be living in Hawaii and doing things like that.
Yeah, I used to be, I wrote an article probably about 2.5 years ago about travel health insurance, and I was very, at the time, against third-party plans because I thought that they were not very good coverage and they were expensive and all that. And then just recently we found that in terms of cost, especially if you're not getting subsidies through the ACA, they're pretty comparable. So right now I do get subsidies, so my premiums are lower, but next year I probably won't. So I will probably switch to a third-party plan. The premium will be about the same. The coverage is actually better, and then you don't have to worry about if you had medical issues outside of your home state. All the ACA plans, at least on our exchange, only apply to Virginia. So if we're outside of Virginia, then we're really not covered. So a lot of these third-party plans, they seem to be getting better, and especially if you're young and healthy, the premiums are not too high. So they make a lot more sense now.
Yeah, the one I'm on, I think that was one of the stipulations. If you had any pre-existing medical conditions, there's a chance you will get denied. But the one I'm on, it stays pretty low cost because I am young and healthy and I don't really have any medical conditions. So it's worked out really well for me, and it's relieved me of the stress of having to worry about, like normally right now, if I was going to be starting a contract, what we had done in the past is I would go off my marketplace plan and I would be enrolling in the health insurance because I want to talk about like the credentialing process and like getting started on a new contract. These are the things you have to think about, but this time it's going to be seamless. I don't have to change insurance this time, which is just really nice not to have that on my mind and to know it's going to work for me in Hawaii. So just depending on what your situation is, if you were starting a new contract in Hawaii, if you were taking the company insurance and working a full 40-hour full-time gig, that might be the best option for you. But if you weren't, or if you were concerned about like those gaps between contracts, a private insurance could be a good option for you. If you guys are interested in learning more about that, we can get you in touch with the insurance agent that we've gone through. And she's extremely helpful, and they do free consultations, so you can just get free information from them. Kind of like working with a recruiter. Like when you work with a recruiter, it's no obligation. You can talk to them and they can show you all your options. And then you can say like, nah, no thanks. Like that doesn't sound like it's for me.
Yeah.
Or you might say, yeah, that sounds great. It sounds like it's good for me.
And we have experience with this because earlier this year, or at the end of last year, we were trying to decide what we were going to do, what Whitney was going to do about her health insurance. And we talked to a few different ones. So we kind of shopped around and we found the person that we liked best. And, there was no hard feelings with the other ones that we talked to or anything. So yeah, if you guys want any information about the one that we decided to go through, leave us a comment or send us a message.
Yep, we can let you know about that. So then the other thing is, right as I'm getting ready to start this, you usually have like credentialing type things that you have to do. So this is my first time taking a contract with this recruiter. We've been in touch with him and been in communication with him for a couple of years now, but this is my first time taking a contract with him. And that's the way it is with a lot of our recruiters. Like, we've got some recruiters that we've known for 5 or 6 years, but I've never taken a job with them, but we're still friends and we talk to them all the time, and when I'm doing a job search, they'll send me options, and if it doesn't work out, they're like, yeah, it's okay. So first time taking a contract with this company, and so they sent me the whole list of all the things they need. Like they need your driver's license and your, social security number, and they need your CPR card and all these things. I had to get a drug screen done, so they usually schedule that for you. They'll send you to a clinic and they just send you, like, they call it an e-passport. They scan the code. So I went and got my drug test last week, so I haven't heard back about whether I passed that or not, but I think I should be fine. Just kidding. But so totally should be fine with that. They had to do a background check, so hopefully I'll be fine with that. So yeah, all these things are kind of working in the background as I prepare to leave in a week. So hopefully I'll hear back this week about all my credentialing stuff, and they'll say you're approved to start. And then the last thing is just the COVID tests we have to get, and packing. We have to pack.
Yeah.
But we'll figure it out.
So as you can see, there's quite a bit that goes into it. It can be a little scary, but I think it's going to be an amazing experience. Everyone we've talked to that's taken an assignment anywhere in Hawaii, especially on the Big Island, they seem to have really awesome things to say. So we could not be more excited about getting there and hiking and seeing the volcanoes. And
man,
we're really excited.
To be honest, it doesn't even seem real yet, because it's just been such a whirlwind for me these last couple of weeks, ticking all these things off the list and preparing. I was wrapping up at my PRN job. I told them I needed this whole week off. So I can just get ready and pack. It's also my birthday on Tuesday, so just a lot of things to think about. So it hasn't even really set in for me yet that it's real, and that a week from right now we're gonna be there. But everybody has just told us that they had an amazing experience. Some people said they never left. They ended up taking permanent jobs because they loved Hawaii so much. So we cannot wait to get there, and we are so excited to just share the whole experience with you guys and let you know all the things about when we get there and what it's like and all that. So we'll definitely do another video in 2 weeks once we're there and we're settled in, updating you guys on all this stuff.
Yeah, and if you want to see some awesome Hawaii pictures, definitely follow us on Instagram, because you can be sure that Whitney will post a lot of cool pictures.
Yes, there should be endless beach pictures, food pictures. Hopefully we'll make it to a luau and a volcano and all kinds of stuff. So stay tuned for that.
Yep.
Well, let us know what questions you guys have. I know there's a lot of questions already from earlier in the video, but if you have any lingering questions, something we didn't touch on, something you're curious about, let us know. Again, if you liked this video, if you enjoyed it, if you learned something, hit the thumbs up button, share it with a friend. All right, see what questions you guys have for us.
Curly says, any thoughts on Cody Garbrandt? I have not watched that fight yet. I forgot it was last night.
And have you discussed crypto yet? No, we have not.
Yeah, crypto has been rough this week.
No, we did not talk about that, guys. Nick is giving us recommendations. Go to Death Valley while you're in Vegas. He's talking about our trip to Vegas later this year for Travelers Conference. We've already been to Death Valley, actually.
Yeah.
We went last year on our road trip.
I think it was September or end of August. It was really hot. It was awful.
So in regards to a car, Jeremiah asked, what's your opinion on bicycle rentals on the island, or just taking an Uber over longer distances as needed?
So two things.
A couple things here. Let's cover a few angles here.
We definitely thought about this. If it was up to me, I would probably think about this more. But there's two issues. One, Whitney can't ride a bike very well.
Not very well. Okay, the last time I tried to ride a bike, we were in
Vienna.
We were in Vienna, Austria, right? Yeah.
Yes.
We were on our Europe trip, and Jared was like, "Oh yeah, you're the girl who hasn't ridden a bike in years, and you don't like to ride bikes. Let's rent these city bikes. It'll be really fun. They've got these nice paths through Vienna." It was awful. I fell off the bike. I cried. I hit what do you call them?
Someone else's handlebars.
I got cussed at in another language. Like, I'm not really a bicyclist, guys. And we even thought about a scooter also, and I was like, well, I'm okay with a scooter, but I can't personally drive a scooter either, so you'd be having to take me to work all the time on the back of the scooter with my little helmet on. So
I kept thinking about Dumb and Dumber.
We did consider these options, honestly, but there's one thing, I can't really ride it. Second thing, where we're living is, they said it's like a 1,200 feet elevation gain from the downtown. It's only a 10-minute drive. It's really not that far, but you'd have to go up this like mountain.
Yeah, so that's probably the big thing. A lot of Hawaii is, volcanoes and very steep, and so I don't think it would be a very easy bike ride. It might be easy going down, but it would be tough coming back up.
And it just depends on the proximity of where you would be living to work. If you were able to find a place that was relatively close to work, that could totally be an option. And I believe that they have Uber in some of the cities. So I believe in Kona, if you want to drive around just Kona, there is Uber, and same thing in Hilo, and obviously if you were in Honolulu. But from what I understand, like, a lot of the places are more rural and they don't have Uber access, especially like Kauai. You can't really rely on taxis and Ubers and stuff like that from what we hear in Kauai.
So yeah, the people we've talked to, I mean, I don't think almost anybody tries to get around by bike and Uber, because there's a lot that you want to see there, and I think some people do rent scooters and things like that, but just a regular bicycle, that would really limit how much you're able to do. And then Uber would add up a lot, especially if you're going, any significant distance. So most people either rent a car or buy something and then sell it before they leave.
Yeah, but definitely a good question. Definitely something we thought about when we saw those rental car prices.
Nick says you can always steal someone's car. It's free. That is true.
Brian asked if we already talked about the licensing. Yeah, we talked about that in the beginning of the video, Brian.
So the licensing, that was a variety of factors that all added together. 1, COVID. 2, Whitney didn't follow up as much. And 3, we have a lot of state licenses already, which meant a lot of license verification. So those 3 things together meant a really long time. But ideally, I don't think it would take that long for most people.
I think you should typically plan on about 2 months is what I understand. But again, with COVID, everything has been super slow. So Thomas actually has a question about insurance. So yeah, we keep getting a lot of insurance questions. Thomas says, off topic, but are you aware of any travel companies that offer group long-term disability insurance to travelers?
I don't think so. I don't think I've ever seen that. I know a lot of them have short-term disability, but I don't think I've ever seen long-term disability as an option. I mean, you can always go through your own plan. Probably a group plan would be cheaper, but I don't know of any companies that offer that.
Yeah, we haven't really gone out of our way to enroll in any disability programs. We just try to keep our own savings in case of, an incident like that. But it's definitely something to consider.
Yeah.
But I think part of it too with insurance is, like we've always said, these types of things are going to be based only on your hourly taxable pay. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's going to actually be a lower number than what you really think. Like if you were to draw disability insurance based on your hourly, it's not that high of a number.
But I mean, disability insurance is never a bad thing to have. You never know what'll happen. So especially if you're early in your career, it's always something to look into. But yeah, I don't know of any companies that offer it.
George is our longtime travel PTA friend. He's been doing this many years, and he says he's never had the desire to go to Hawaii.
It's because you're used to those really cold winters, I bet.
Well, I think you're in the minority there, George. But I don't know, not everybody's beach people, but there seems to be so much amazing stuff in Hawaii besides the beaches, just the mountains and the volcanoes, and the culture is going to be awesome. We're excited. And then Maggie had asked earlier if we work with more than one company, and recruiters, absolutely. We always recommend multiple recruiters. If you guys are interested in which recruiters we recommend, you can go on our website and fill out our recruiter recommendations form or comment on this video, and we can get you in touch. Rosie says, I just saw a job pop up in Hawaii and it is saying 4 weeks to get a license. Haha.
If you don't have any other licenses already and you follow up regularly and things are probably getting better now that it's been a year since COVID started, Maybe. It could happen.
Maybe. And I'm sure every discipline is different too. Like, I'm sure maybe the PT, OT, and SLP boards are a little different. But in Hawaii, like I said, they all have that PVL licensing division. And I think it kind of all has to go through them. So I feel like all the disciplines would be similar, but I don't know. I think I was in the minority of people who it took really long time, but I would allow a couple months. Okay. Christina says, how long does your Hawaii license last? And can you explain the cycles? I saw something about odd versus even years. Great question. So I can't remember all the details because honestly, I started this 9 months ago and I did read about it more thoroughly then. At this point, I'm just so happy to have it. I want to say it lasts for 2 years before you have to renew. And that was the thing about mine because it was like, if it's an odd year, you pay this amount. If it's an even year, you pay this amount. So because I started the process on an even year, I paid the fee that it asked me to pay, but because it went into the odd year, I had to pay an additional fee, but nobody told me, so I don't know. You got to read the details of the fine print on their
But yeah, there is something
website.
about odd and even years for sure.
I don't know. It's complicated for no reason, but try to read all the fine print on their website. That's all I can tell you. Okay. Melanie says, another bit of advice, if your name has changed, such as if you got married, it took over 6 months to get the license because an old license was under my maiden name and they put it in another file.
Oh yeah.
Gosh, I didn't even think about that. We're not married yet, so I haven't had to deal with a name change.
Yeah, all kinds of crazy things happen with licensing. So that's why we always tell people to be very careful about like trying to find a job and then get licensed afterwards. So we had an issue when we were getting our Massachusetts license. We sent them in together and our applications got stuck together somehow, and Whitney got approved and I didn't. And all this time went by. Her license went through in less than a week. It had been like 3 weeks for me. We're about to start our jobs, and then I call and say, I don't know what happened. We sent our applications in the same envelope, and she got approved and I haven't. And they go and they check hers and they find mine attached to it. And it's like, stuff like that happens. So yeah, you can't really push it in terms of timeline.
Mm-hmm. So definitely start early when it comes to that Hawaii license because they're not super easy to get in touch with either. All right, let's see if you guys have any more questions for us. I think that was all the older ones. Scroll down real quick and see if you guys had any new questions. Okay. Melanie has another suggestion. She says, when I was there, I bought a lot of food and staples from Amazon. Using Prime, delivery was free. Stores are very expensive and everything, so it saved me a lot of money. Good to know.
Yeah.
We actually were just wondering about Amazon. And that was on our to Google list. So that's really good to know. And a lot of people would also suggest like getting a Costco card, and I think they have something called like Safeway there. So yeah, we're definitely gonna have to try to bargain hunt. And you know, when we travel internationally, we usually go to a lot of places that are cheaper, and we will eat out a lot more. But because we're gonna at least have that kitchenette, and I'll be working, and I'll have kind of like a regular schedule, we'll try to eat at home a lot and cook as much as possible, and only eat out maybe once or twice a week to save some money. But we just know going into it that it's about the experience. And even though we're extremely frugal people, we just know, okay, well, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So you're just going to have to pay a little bit more.
Yep. Yeah, but we're excited. I think that's all the questions and comments. If you guys have any other ones, always feel free to leave them in the video if you're watching this later, and we'll come back and answer them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. The next time that we see you, we will be coming at you from Hawaii.
Hopefully,
if everything goes to plan. The other thing I just thought of in saying that is I hope our internet connection is good in Hawaii, because that was one question we had for our Furnished Finder host. And she said that she had some complaints from her guests before that the signal wasn't that strong because it comes from the main house into the Ohana suite. So I hope that it'll be strong, but if not, she talked about maybe getting a signal booster, which, I told her if she needed to, we could pay her for that, or maybe we could get a hotspot or something. So hopefully we'll have good internet connection and be able to continue to bring you guys videos and keep you up to date about Hawaii. But stay tuned. Definitely follow us on our Instagram and Facebook pages because I'll be posting a lot of pictures there.
Yep. See you guys later.
Thanks for tuning in. Bye.